Evening, come in. Mind the step there by the doorway. The floor's little uneven. There we are. You made it just before closing. Not that it matters much tonight. It's been a quiet evening. Go ahead and put your things down wherever you're comfortable. The chair by the radiator is probably the warmest spot in the shop. That old radiator has been rattling away for years now. I keep meaning to replace it, but somehow every winter it survives another season. Now then, let's have a look at what you brought in. A jacket, a jumper, and a pair of trousers. Nothing too serious by the look of it. Actually, you brought these in at exactly the right time. Most repairs start off very small. A loose stitch, a tiny hole, a weak seam, easy things to fix. It's when people leave them for months that they become a real problem. Let's start with the jacket. I'll spread it out here under the lamp. I always enjoy this part, having a proper look, trying to work out what's happened. You can learn quite a lot from the way clothes wear over time. Not anything dramatic, just little clues. People who keep their hands in their pockets. People who carry bags on one shoulder. People who spend a lot of time outdoors. The clothes usually tell the story eventually. There it is. Just along the sleeve. A seam that's beginning to come apart. Nothing major at all. A few minutes work. I've certainly seen worse. Much worse. In fact, some of the things that come through this door are remarkable. A gentleman brought in an old coat last winter that looked as though it had survived several decades of hard labor. I honestly wasn't sure where to begin, but he loved that coat. That's something I've noticed over the years. People rarely bring in their newest clothes. It's always the favorites, the comfortable ones, the jacket they've worn for years, the jumper that comes out every winter, the things that have become part of everyday life. And I quite like that. Seems a shame to throw something away when it still has plenty of life left in it. Right, let's find the correct thread. Bear with me a moment. I've got drawers full of this stuff, every color imaginable. And despite spending years organizing everything, I still end up searching for things. Let's see. Not that one. Not that one. Ah, there we are. Perfect. You know, this shop wasn't originally supposed to be mine. I worked here years ago when the previous owner was still running it. A gentleman called Arthur. Proper tailor. Proper craftsman. The sort of person who never rushed anything. Didn't matter whether it was a wedding suit or a missing button. Every job received the same care. I learned a lot from him, mostly patience. That was Arthur's greatest skill. Patience. He never seemed hurried, never flustered. Even during the busiest weeks of the year. I've always admired that, especially on evenings like this. Just quietly working away while the rain taps against the window. Speaking of which, listen to that. It's been raining most of the afternoon. Nothing heavy, just enough to keep people indoors. The street becomes very peaceful when it rains. Most of the shops nearby have closed already. The florist shut earlier. The bakery closed hours ago. By this time of night, the whole road feels completely different. During the day, it's busy enough. People shopping, deliveries arriving, cars looking for spaces. But after dark, everything slows down. I quite like it. No ringing phones, no rushing, no interruptions. Just a little peace and quiet. There we are. That sleeve is already looking much better. I'll set the jacket aside for now. Let's move on to the jumper. This looks comfortable. You can always tell. Soft fabric, slightly faded. The sort of thing people reach for without even thinking. Ah, yes. There's the problem. Tiny hole near the cuff. That's actually good news. Small repairs are usually the easiest. Catch them early and they are almost invisible when finished. Leave them too long and things become more complicated. Not impossible, just more work. I'll get started on that in a moment. But first, I think it's time for a cup of tea. Would you like one? Excellent. So would I. The kettle's in the little room at the back. Won't be a minute. Right then. Tea's ready. Careful. The mug's quite warm. There we are. always thought tea tastes better in a workshop. Couldn't tell you why. Maybe because you stop what you're doing long enough to appreciate it. Or maybe that's just an excuse to drink more tea. Now back to the jumper. I lay it under the lamp again. The hole is actually smaller than I first thought. That's ideal. Should disappear very nicely once it's repaired. You know, people often apologize when they bring clothes in, as though they somehow done something wrong by wearing them. I hear it all the time. Sorry about the state of it, or it's probably not worth fixing. But I've never really agreed with that. Clothes are meant to be worn. That's their job. If a jumper looks tired after years of use, that doesn't mean it's failed. It means it was useful. Far better than something hanging untouched in a wardrobe. The favorite clothes always end up looking worn eventually. That's completely normal. Let me just take a closer look here. Yes, very straightforward. A few careful stitches and that will be sorted. You know, most of my regular customers come from nearby villages. Some have been visiting this shop longer than I've owned it. A few still think of me as the new guy, which is quite funny after all this time. One customer still asks where Arthur is whenever he comes in. Then he tells me the same story about the coat he bought years ago. I could probably tell the story myself at this point, but I let him tell it. Seems important to him, and to be honest, I quite enjoy hearing it. That's one of the things I like about little independent shops. You get to know people. Not deeply, just enough. Enough to recognize faces, enough to remember names, enough to ask how someone's doing. The world feels a little friendlier that way. Outside, I think the rain is finally easing. You can hear the difference, just the occasional drop now. There's a street lamp opposite the shop. When it rains at night, the light catches every drop. I've spent a lot of evenings looking out at that view. Not because there's much happening. It's quite the opposite. Sometimes it's nice when nothing is happening. Everything these days seems determined to grab your attention. Phones, screens, news, adverts, Meanwhile, you've got a quiet little side street, a few puddles, a warm light, and somehow that's enough. Maybe that's why I enjoy working here. The pace suits me. There we are, just about finished. Let me have a look. Yes, that's come out nicely. You'd struggle to find where the hole was now. Exactly what we want. A repair shouldn't draw attention to itself. It should simply let the garment carry on doing its job. I'll fold that neatly and put it with the jacket. There we are. 2 down. 1 to go. And that leaves the trousers. Let's have a look at those next. I think I know exactly what's happening here. Pocket lining. A classic repair. In fact, if I had to make a list of the jobs I see most often, worn pocket linings would be near the top. Especially on trousers people wear regularly. Keys, coins, phones, wallets. Years of use eventually take their toll. One day, you reach into your pocket and discover a hole that wasn't there before. Usually, at the least convenient moment possible. Let's turn these inside out. There we are. Yes, exactly what I expected. Nothing serious. Just worn through along the corner. I will reinforce the surrounding area while I'm here. No point repairing one section if another is about to fail. That's another thing Arthur taught me. Always look slightly beyond the obvious problem. If one button falls off, check the others. If one seam is weak, inspect the rest. It saves everyone trouble later. Now then, needle, thread. Here we go, ready to begin. The clock says nearly 9. It's hard to believe, really. Feels later somehow. Maybe it's the weather. Rain always changes the atmosphere. Makes everything slower. I don't mind it. Though after several days in a row, even I start wishing for a bit of sunshine. Then, of course, when it finally arrives, everyone complains that it's too hot. That's just the way of things. Too much rain, too much heat, too much wind. We always seem to find something to grumble about. Still, I suppose it gives us something to talk about. There we are. This is coming together nicely. Steady little stitches, nothing complicated. Tailoring is rarely as dramatic as people imagine. Most of the time, it's simply patient work, one stitch after another, one repair after another, and before long, the job is finished. I think that's one reason I've always enjoyed it. There's something satisfying about solving a small problem. You start with something worn or damaged, and an hour later it's ready for years more use. Simple, practical, useful. I like that. The shop itself hasn't changed much over the years. The same wooden counter, the same workbench, the same shelves. Some of the drawers are probably older than I am. A few stick when the weather changes. One of the cupboard doors never closes properly. I've been meaning to fix it for years. But somehow it remains exactly as it is. Funny how that happens. We all become used to little imperfections, the same way we become used to favorite chairs, favorite mugs, favorite routines. Not because they are perfect, because they are familiar. And familiarity can be comforting, especially at night. There we are. Almost finished now. Just a few more stitches. Perfect. That should hold nicely. Let's add a little reinforcement here and there. Excellent. That pocket will probably outlast the rest of the trousers now. I'll turn them back the right way. There we are. Good as new. Well, not new exactly, but ready for plenty more use. And honestly, that's often better. I think clothes look their best once they've been lived in a little. Once they've developed a bit of character, a bit of history. The newest things rarely have the most personality. It's the old favorites people remember. Now then, the repairs are done. The jacket, the jumper, the trousers. Not a bad evening's work. I'll set them out here together for a moment. There we are. I always enjoy this part, seeing everything finished, seeing the transformation. Small it may be, Now, I think these could all do with a quick press before they go home. Nothing major, just enough to freshen everything up. The pressing station is over there. I've had this old thing for years. Still works perfectly. Makes a few noises now and then. Let's start with the jacket. There we are. Smooth the fabric out. A little steam. That's better. Immediately looks sharper. I always liked this stage. Everything starts to feel complete, finished, ready. When I first started in tailoring, I assumed the job was mostly sewing, which makes sense. That's what most people think. But after enough years, you realize it's mostly about paying attention, noticing things, tiny details, the sort of things other people walk straight past. A loose thread, a worn cuff, a button that's nearly ready to come off. You learn to spot them automatically. I suppose every profession does that. The baker notices bread. The mechanic notices engines. The gardener notices plants. And tailors notice clothes. Even when we are not trying to. I caught myself sitting in cafes, looking at somebody's jacket and wondering how it was made. Occupational hazard, I suppose. There we are. The jacket's finished. Let's move on to the jumper. This won't take long. It's a nice color, actually. Simple. Nothing flashy. I've always preferred clothes like that. Things that don't try too hard. Comfort has always seemed more important than fashion, especially on rainy evenings. Speaking of rain, I think it's finally stopped completely. Listen. Nothing. Just the clock. The radiator. And the faint sound of a car somewhere in the distance. The street outside will be almost empty now. Most people are home, probably settling down for the night. The bookshop next door will definitely be closed. The florist too. The bakery has been dark for hours. Everyone heading home, one the sense that the whole town is gradually winding down, slowing its pace, turning down the volume, getting ready for tomorrow. There we are. The jumper's looking good. Let's fold that neatly. Perfect. That leaves the trousers. The final job of the evening. And I certainly can't complain. I've had much busier days, particularly around Christmas. That's always the busiest time. Every rail full, every hangar occupied, people suddenly remembering events they've had planned for months, then discovering something needs adjusting or shortening or repairing, and somehow everyone needs it urgently. It always works out in the end. But I do appreciate quieter evenings like this. A warm shop, a few repairs, and nowhere urgent to be. There we are. The trousers are finished too. I'll hang them up beside the others. Perfect. You know, one of my favorite moments comes right at the end of the day. The moment when you realize there's nothing left to do. No unfinished jobs. Everything completed. It's a nice feeling. A peaceful feeling. Perhaps that's why I sometimes stay a little later than necessary. Not because I have to. Because I enjoy leaving things tidy, ready for tomorrow. Speaking of which, let's put everything away. Scissors back into the drawer. Thread back on the shelf. Needles into their case. The workbench looks respectable again. Much better. Arthur used to do exactly the same thing every evening, no matter how busy he'd been. Everything went back where it belonged before he left. At the time, I thought he was being overly particular. Now I find myself doing exactly the same thing. You spend enough years around somebody, and eventually, little pieces of them stay with you. The routines, the habits, the ordinary moments. I think that's true for everyone. A little bit of the people we've known travels with us through life. Right then, I think that's everything. The repairs are finished. The shop is tidy. And it's getting late. Let's have one last look outside. The pavement is still wet from the earlier rain. Street lamp reflections stretching across the road. No people, no movement. Just a quiet little side street settling down for the night. Day feels complete. The town is slowly switching itself off until morning arrives and everything begins again. Well, thank you for keeping me company this evening. It's been nice, much nicer than talking to myself. I'll get these clothes packed up for you. They were all sorted, ready to go. Take care on the way home. The pavement might be still a little slippery. And if you ever need anything repaired again, you know where to find me. Just look for the little tailor shop on the side street. The one with the warm lamp in the window. The one that sometimes open a little later than it should be. Good night and safe travels home.